Tonight, Justin Trudeau finally quits, calling it quits this week, and Trump steps up rhetoric about Canada, the 51st state. From Montreal, this is Night Talk, episode 15. I'm Gary MacDonald.
And from Tulum, Mexico, on personal assignment, I'm Eddie Tkalik.
A personal assignment. Happy New Year, Eddie. A personal assignment. I have to get some of those too. You have to fit. Okay, so this is the first full week of the new year, Eddie, and it began with the much anticipated announcement from Justin Trudeau. He will resign as Liberal leader and Prime Minister.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process. Last night, I asked the President of the Liberal Party to begin that process. This country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election. The Liberal Party of Canada is an important institution in the history of our great country and democracy. A new Prime Minister and leader of the Liberal Party will carry its values and ideals into that next election. I'm excited to see the process unfold in the months ahead. We were elected for the third time in 2021 to strengthen the economy post-pandemic and advance Canada's interests in a complicated world. And that is exactly the job that I and we will continue to do for Canadians.
And of course, that announcement coming Monday morning, it was, as I said earlier, much anticipated, Eddie. After the uproar on December 16th, where his finance minister and deputy prime minister, Chrystia Freeland, resigned hours before she was to present the fall economic statement in the House. And then there was a cabinet meeting, and a lot of the cabinet ministers later in the day were not happy with the way things were shaking out as well. And Trudeau, coming out of that cabinet meeting, and we do have a quick clip of that as well, he was putting on a brave face, but he was visibly shaken.
We just had an excellent cabinet meeting that was almost entirely focused on the Canada-US dynamic. We know how important it is for Canadians that we be there to protect not just the Canadian economy, but their jobs, the cost of living challenges they're facing that could get worse. We have a lot of work to do, and that's what we're focused on.
So he tried to put on a brave face there, but you could see if you really looked into his eyes that he was shaken. And he went out that night to one of two Liberal Party Christmas parties, gave a speech at both of them. The second one that I saw looked a lot more almost like he was on a campaign speech, but he did give assurances that he would take the holiday period and reflect on his future with the party.
Right.
He came back on Monday and made that announcement. I watched it in its entirety, including when he took questions from reporters. And I was left thinking to myself, he came out and he said, well, I'm a fighter. Everyone knows I'm a fighter, and it's against my, makeup to not pick up and get back in the ring kind of thing. But in a lot of ways, it seemed to me and to a lot of other people and pundits that he was not fully accepting blame. Here is a person who months ago, when the internal unease within the caucus started to flow over publicly, and he, if you recall, gave them assurances he would consider his future after one meeting in the fall, and then came back 24 hours later and said, I'm not going anywhere, game over, end of conversation. And then takes us right up to 2 weeks before President-elect Donald Trump is sworn in as president in the U.S., and here we are, a country that's in turmoil, and the interest around the world in what's been happening here is just amazing. I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to some of the people in Mexico coming and going, in the last couple of days, and if you picked up on anything from them.
No, nothing specifically here. I mean, in Tulum, you have to look at the demographic here. A lot of young people here. It's festival season here in Tulum. It's very difficult to get a serious conversation in edgewise in terms of what's going on in the world, let alone locally here in Mexico. So everybody's in party mode. But from the one or two people I did briefly talk to. Not that they're paying close attention in Canada, they're just well aware that we no longer have a prime minister in Canada. And the obvious question was, well, when are you actually going to have an election to determine the new leader? But anything deeper than that here in Mexico, I wasn't really able to have any one-on-one or serious one-on-one conversations in that regard. Like I said, most people are here to party, and that's exactly what they're doing. But personally, though, I mean, you and I talked about this, I think, 2 over 3 episodes that we had before the Christmas holidays, Gary. And you actually hit the nail right on the head. You know, there was an opportunity for him to listen to his own caucus, listen to his own people, look at the polls, look in the mirror and say, I did the best I possibly could in terms of doing the best I can for the country I love. And no, he didn't resign. He basically says, oh, I'm sticking around. And that sticking around actually put Canada, its citizens, you and I, Gary, as its longtime citizens, in a little bit of a pickle here. Like you said, Mr. Trump is going to be sworn in a couple of weeks. And here we are, part of the G7, country is part of the G7, the G20, who is a serious hitter in the world, without a leader during the most crucial time of Donald Trump taking office come the 20th of January. And you know what? The man, Donald Trump, will say a lot. He'll basically say, oh, look over here while he's doing something over there. The stuff that he's proposing and the stuff that it's coming across as rhetoric, especially, like you mentioned, Canada, the 51st state, that is scary stuff, because who knows what the hell's in the back of his mind? Who knows what's in the back of the person who might actually be leading the country, Elon Musk's mind, in terms of what is next for North America. I tried looking at some of the news elements here in Mexico itself. Not much is being said. The president of Mexico, she briefly commented and mentioned that Mr. Trudeau is a great leader. He's always looking after the well-being not just of Canada but all of North America. As she spoke to the free trade agreement. But that was pretty much about it. There was no discussions after that in the news media about Canada's next steps. Maybe that's going to come in the days to come, but in the immediate, there wasn't a whole hell of a lot said in the Mexican media. So, Gary, you know what? Here we are, you and I as citizens. We have a lame duck leader in our country. We have a government that's basically handcuffed up until the end of March, I think 23rd or the 25th of March, before Parliament resumes. And for what, Gary? I mean, what value does that provide us as Canadians if truly he was worried about the well-being of our country? He should have resigned in September, not now, where everybody's like in a rush to get things done. And by the time we get things done, I think Mr. Trump is going to have 5 months of creating havoc where we don't have a leg to stand on here in Canada.
Well, Trump's like a shark. He smells blood in the water, and definitely there is blood in the water here. I'm totally miffed with Justin Trudeau and the way he has handled this. Yes, from a political standpoint, a couple of months ago, they were trailing in the polls and double digits. They still are. But he also, if he really believed in what's best for the country, as he said again on Monday, then, suck it up, call the election, because we didn't need a minority parliament going into the first few months of Trump's presidency, especially before he's even inaugurated, he's talking about tariffs. We needed a fresh mandate. He should have been smart enough to say, I really do need a fresh mandate, and we need a much more solid government than a minority government going into the next 4 years, and then let the cards, fly as they may from there. But he did
politics.
Yeah,
Play politics.
He did, and he's lost big time, because not only his legacy is tainted by this, but also he has decimated the Liberal Party. That party will not win the next election in the next, whenever it's called, in the next 6 weeks or so, will not win that election. And they're going to be clawing back, the party's going to be clawing back over the next 4 years. It's probably going to end up clawing back unless Poilievre messes up big time, and that's always a possibility.
Right.
And if, the Liberals have the right leader in place, great. But if they don't have the right leader in place, they're going to be relegated again to the backbenches on the opposition side of the House. So, that'll be 10 years, at least 8 to 10 years, before that party would have a chance of coming back. What is he saying? He's basically given the finger to not only Liberal supporters, but also all of those who have served with him, and his loyal soldiers around the cabinet table, sticking with him right up till the end. He's done the party no favors whatsoever. And he's going to see that, yes, his legacy, he may have somewhat of a legacy on the positive side, but overall, it's going to be tainted by either his inability to come to the right decision at the right time for the goodness of the party and the country, or I should say the country and the party, or doing what he did and ending up looking somewhat like a narcissistic individual who focused on himself. Because he did really, when you think about how he phrased everything in his speech the other day,
right,
he really kind of danced around wearing any of the responsibility.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I saw it. It wasn't very quiet when I actually watched the resignation on television. And then later on, a couple hours later, I took a look at the whole thing, and paying attention to his body language, definitely emotional. He wears emotion on his sleeve. There's no way you can hide that. A lot of disappointment in his face, and the way he presented himself. Was it a little bit like, woe is me? I don't know. I don't think so. He's a pretty stand-up individual, if you want to look at it from a personality perspective. But you kind of listen to what he's been saying, blaming the caucus, which is the people that have supported him through thick and thin, kind of throwing them under the bus. And then I think he, towards the middle, he was speaking about Chrystia Freeland, his former deputy prime minister and finance minister, and in clearly saying, well, you know what, she's been tied to me for 10 years, kind of insinuating she's been successful for 10 years because of him. I mean, that's basically throwing her under the bus if she's essentially going to be running for the leadership of the Liberal Party.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then saying, I was reading an article somewhere this week as well. I forget what news outlet, where he actually stated that one of the other reasons why the Liberal Party struggled, or he struggled, blaming it on the fact that he didn't push forward an electoral reform, basically, changing the way the electorate is held in the country, that would probably have given him a better opportunity to stay in power. Why would you start saying these things after you're gone, knowing it's only going to incriminate your legacy? And look, let's call a spade, Gary. I think every prime minister we've had in history, all of them have done some really good things for our country. And along with that, there's a lot of bad things that happen. So you got to take a look at the balance here. Mr. Trudeau did a lot of good things for the middle guy in the country, right? And at the end of the day, what brings him down is there's a couple of scandals that he had to go through. His C-13 reforms in support of Bill 101 in Quebec basically came to hurt him. The SNC-Lavalin affair, it hurt him a lot. So, for all the great things that he's done, there's a lot of things that are hounding him or have been hounding him. And the last year, in terms of the by-elections that he's lost, those were clear-cut indicators to you, Gary, if you were an elected official or me, holy moly, we're in trouble here. What am I going to do that's best for A, the country? What am I going to do best that's B, for the Liberal Party of Canada? And that certainly was not hanging around until the last second. So you're absolutely right, Gary. I think the history books are going to go back and say he did a lot of good, a lot of problems with any, that he had in terms of scandal or whatever it is, like any other leader has to go with it. You're looking at inflation, you're looking at the deficit. Those are all common words with any leader of any country. But in this particular instance, he just hung around way too long when everything was written on the wall for him months ago that it's time to go and time to make changes. And you know what? Right off on your magic carpet in a good way. But he basically burned his carpet. He has no carpet to fly off on right now.
Yeah, leave them on a high note. And
right.
and that's something that he did not do, was leave on a high note in any way. No matter how you slice it, he was not leaving on a high note on Monday, for sure. And now, as you said earlier, he is nothing but a lame duck prime minister, and our government is even more lame duck. Parliament is suspended because it's been prorogued until March 24th, and the only reason that it's back on March 24th is it's the end of the March 31st is the end of the government fiscal year, and they need to have the budget or at least spending estimates of some sort passed in time for April 1st, for the rollover on April 1st to keep things funded. So,
right.
And you mentioned electoral reform, and that was one of his promises back in 2015. And he set up a commission, but it was scrapped shortly after. And he blamed it on the opposition, not being able to find some kind of common ground with the opposition. But if you go back, I think you're going to find that it wasn't so much not finding any common ground. He had one vision that there are those who suggest would have benefited the Liberal Party going forward, more so than anyone else. And that was it. And because he couldn't get what he said, any kind of a compromise or consensus with the opposition parties, he scrapped it right away. Instead of at least, okay, let's go back to the table. Here's what we see how it should go. We've got these other views. Let's see if there's some kind of common ground. He didn't give it enough time. And, changing the electoral system in the country that's been around forever, again, is like trying to stop a fully loaded freight train on a dime. That's not going to happen. It takes time for these things. And, you have a lot of stuff to cut through to get to the real, to the bones. So there are things like that just kind of make my blood boil when it comes to Justin Trudeau, and especially the way things have been handled in the last year, even through the minority parliament and the deal that he had with the NDP. And the NDP, to me, and Jagmeet Singh are no better than Justin Trudeau and the Liberals in the way that, the way the two of them governed throughout. Yes, the NDP claiming, well, we did get some victory because, we had the dental plan and we have pharmacare. Very, very limited plans, though. Very limited plans. And like everything else related to any kind of healthcare in this country, there's not going to be any consistency across the board, so that
Right.
as a Canadian, you feel comfortable traveling or moving to live in any other part of the country and knowing you're going to get a consistent level of service, because it's not going to happen.
Well, you know, that's interesting you mentioned that. Look at look at a model that a lot of us can follow. I mean, here we are talking about the great North American divide being Canada, a monstrous country in North America. In terms of, a Canadian citizen being able to get consistent services, or, consistent government, or consistent rights right across the country. It's a vast country of ours. I mean, albeit we're close to 40 million people, it's still a huge country. So, I should be able to enjoy the value and benefits of this wonderful country of ours if I decide to move to British Columbia, for sake, or if I decide to move to Saskatchewan. You should have some sort of common level elements of the Canadian culture, the Canadian laws, Canadian freedoms, the Charter of Rights, and all that wonderful stuff. Going back to what I was mentioning, look at the European Union. In the European Union, people can pretty much pick up their bags, put the kids under their arms, and you know what? I'm in Italy today. I think I'm going to go move to France. And you know what? They're going to get a consistent level of experience and services that are governed by what the European Union lawmakers have put down in place in order for a country to qualify to be part of the European Union. So there is an organization there that understands what needs to be done in order for a conglomeration like the EU to be able to function well for all its citizens right across the umpteenth number of countries that are there. Consistency, same level of currency, being able to move from point A to point B and have education the same way, have medical services, and so on and so forth. Is it a bulletproof system out there? Not yet, but they continue to work at it. And here we are in our country, which is absolutely massive. We got a 40 million population here, yet we struggle to be able to ensure that every citizen consistently gets the same level of care and services from our government and our lawmakers. And you're right, Gary. You and I should be able to pack our bags, grab a bottle of whiskey, head out to Alberta, and do our show from there without a problem. But we know that's not going to be the case, which is unfortunate. And I think our lawmakers are not focusing on what you and I need in this country, not just for today, next year, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. And they just don't seem to have the mettle to be able to accomplish that, or the willingness in putting the non-bipartisan movements out of the way, get rid of the divides, excuse me, and work as a functional government.
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly there's still time to perhaps try and pass judgment on Justin Trudeau in perhaps a slightly more favorable light than what he's left here in the last week. However, as let's say there's so many aspects to deal with tonight, and we're very quickly running out of time. So Let's move along. The message from the opposition side of the House was predictable. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre released a pre-recorded video complete with a music track.
While leaderless Liberals focus on saving their jobs and fighting each other for power, the country spirals out of control. An out-of-control housing emergency, an out-of-control migrant crisis, an out-of-control $62 billion deficit, not to mention tariff threats from the United States. Oh, and another NDP Liberal carbon tax hike kicks in this April 1st. Everything's out of control, and now the government is out of control. This cannot go on. We need a carbon tax election now.
Now, I suspect he was out of the country, on vacation, or whatever, and he pre-recorded that in anticipation of something happening while he was away. But you know what? Just there again is some of what is really bothering me about Poilievre. And more I hear the Liberals grabbing hold of the fact, he's the slogan guy and the gimmick kind of guy sort of thing. He doesn't have to do that anymore. He is now the Prime Minister in waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep it very basic. Keep it very diplomatic, and let the other parties self-destruct during the campaign. You have anywhere between a 16 to 20 point lead depending on what poll and what day of the week you're getting the poll results. So back off this kind of thing. This was as insincere as Justin Trudeau's resignation announcement, if not even a little bit more so. He could have just pre-recorded a message and put it out right away when it had it released right away, and then send Andrew Scheer out the following day, which is what happened. Scheer came out yesterday live to answer reporters' questions. But the way that was done, that was just a little too slick, and you know what? It was smarmy, and
Yeah.
frankly,
It
I
was
found
snotty. It really was snotty. It really was.
Yeah, and it did not sit well with me at all. So, on top of that, then we have NDP leader Jagmeet Singh giving a statement and responding to a few questions from reporters during a Zoom call because he was not in Ottawa either.
It's every Liberal minister, every Liberal MP who looked down their nose at you when people were saying we can't make ends meet. We are struggling with the cost of living. So it doesn't matter who the next Liberal leader is. They've let you down. They do not deserve another chance. They're more interested in themselves than the struggles of Canadians. We've got serious threats of Donald Trump and tariffs that put in question hundreds and thousands of Canadian jobs. And instead of focusing on you and protecting your jobs, they're worried about themselves.
I watched, I think I missed the first minute or two, but then I watched it back on replay. And Singh is starting to try and take a page out of Poilievre's playbook in the fact that, first of all, he was much more aggressive sounding than even looking in his comments and in some of the responses to reporters' questions. But he also, if he used the word fight once, he must have used it at least 50, 60 times in the course of that Zoom call that he was on. Right. Fight, 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 fight. Okay, yes, we know you were fighting for, but move on from that part of it. Because again, it's just you're insulting our intelligence. How stupid do you think we are?
Yeah. Well, you know what, and also, I mean, you look at Singh, Mr. Singh. You know what? I mean, it was again a childish approach in terms of communicating with the general population of Canada that's listening and watching every move of every elected official nowadays, especially those vying for the big seat. He could have taken the opportunity to maybe take the high road on this one. I believe he did this one after Poilievre sent his out. I'm sure his people and his advisors saw that. Should have taken an opportunity to take a different road. But it seems to me, like you were right, he basically wanted to go through the same Poilievre sort of communique. What are both of these guys trying to say? Who are they actually trying to communicate with? You're right, Gary. We're not stupid people. Okay, so who in effect are they actually trying to communicate with? Are they trying to make an impression on a certain population, a certain age group, a certain demographic in Canada in taking that type of approach? I really don't know. Didn't work with me. Definitely didn't work with you. I'm sure a lot of professionals are looking at both of them and saying, what the hell are you trying to say here? You said absolutely nothing. And you're spending all of this time saying absolutely nothing. Lost opportunity. Where are these guys' advisors? These guys are being paid fortunes, and obviously they're not giving good advice to either of them. They, as far as I'm concerned, they blew a chance. I was always giving both candidates, a little bit of flexibility. I want to listen to what they have to say. I want to hear how you're going to make this country better. I want to hear how you're going to, make us better in terms of the way the world sees us. And over the last 3 or 4 months, you don't see very much of this. I think there was a flash of brilliance from Mr. Poilievre a couple of months back before the holidays, before Parliament broke for the holidays. But since then, he's just gone back to the same way of just bashing. Why don't you talk about policy and what you're actually going to do for us? You know what? Both guys are communicating with the population in Canada. One big issue right now at the end of the day is what's happening on the 20th of January in the United States of America. How about some assurances? If you were leading the country, how are you going to assure us that things are going to be status quo and getting better and enhancing that relationship with the United States? You hear nothing. It's all about fight. Mr. Singh probably took a page out of the 1-inch fiasco that missed Mr. Trump months ago. Just fight. Well, you know what? Like you said, Gary, we're not stupid. That doesn't do anything for you and I as voters. Neither of them won any brownie points for me. I don't know about you, but didn't win any brownie points from me. So, we've said this in many episodes. What the hell have we got left?
I know.
What do we got left?
Well, there is another leader who actually came out to address things on Monday and did so in Ottawa. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet joined the chorus, calling for an immediate election.
I believe that Mr. Trudeau was right making the decision he made, even if it will cost us a few weeks before we get into elections, which is absolutely required. There is no significant difference between the Liberal Party that we know and the Liberal Party that will be presented to us after there's a new leader to that party. So there's only one way which is relevant for Quebec and I suppose for Canada, is for the population to be called to choose a new parliament composition.
He doesn't see any chance of any significant change on the part of the Liberal Party with a new leader. So again, he figures that the best way to get this resolved and get it resolved as quickly as possible is to get to a general election ASAP. And out of the three of them, to me, Blanchet made the most sense overall. And his delivery was very, very low-key, very, diplomatic and statesmanlike. But, here's the bottom line. Now, Green Party leader Elizabeth May also released a statement, and I'll read that out for people who may be just listening. Part of it reads, "To say public service is a sacrifice is to state the obvious. For that, and especially at a time when basic civility has eroded to where he could be attacked verbally and rudely in front of his youngest on a Christmas holiday, underscores how hard that public service has become. So no matter how liberal broken promises variously sadden me and make me very angry indeed, those are points to be made in the 2025 election. Today, I want to thank Justin Trudeau for his service to his country and wish him and his family much happiness and peace in the years ahead." Now, that whole thing around how he was attacked in front of his son during the ski trip over the Christmas holidays, that really burned my butt big time. For somebody to walk up and show that kind of disrespect for the office, never mind you may not agree with the guy or the woman who's in place, but you respect the office. And for that to happen and to say what she said just to get a video to put on TikTok and get some hits like that. I was just at a loss for words. I was so angry with how that went down. No, I'm the first one to say,
ugly.
yeah, I don't agree with Trudeau and a lot of what he's done. But first of all, he did give service to the country.
Absolutely. And I mean, the way she accosted him, and like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, you hear the term Karen all the time. This was super Karen. Like, who the hell do you think you are walking up to anybody, let alone the Prime Minister of Canada, and talk to them that way? And of course, Mr. Trudeau was handcuffed. He can't say anything because the cameras are running, right? But oh man, I didn't think we had people like that in this country. But I guess individuals can surprise you, right?
There's a whole thing, and we can get into it after this next segment about where this country is going, where the U.S. has gone. And we'll get into it in a moment. But first, Trudeau's resignation announcement was followed closely in the U.S. and around the world. Our Christian Falk is in Germany. I spoke with him earlier today. All right, so we're going to go over to Germany now, and our contributor, Christian Falk, who's in Dusseldorf, and monitoring the reaction to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's announcement that he is stepping down as Prime Minister and party leader. And we'll even get into perhaps some of the reaction to Trump's latest ramblings as well. First of all, Christian, what was the overall response or feeling that you were getting as to the resignation of Trudeau?
Well, like Germans are more seen as rational people, not that emotional. Putting it like this, we just had we recapped what Germany actually thought about Trudeau in general. And the general understanding about Justin Trudeau was that he, in 2015 or 16, he was the new hope for the Liberal Party in Canada. And what was he standing for? Basically, what we hear and people talking to and seeing on the streets when they thought about Trudeau was actually that he was someone who was really pushing the liberal goals forward and not paying too much attention on the real needs of the Canadian people. That's what the media is saying here, and that's also why the media thinks in Europe what led Justin Trudeau's downfall. We see the same thing happening also in other countries like here in Italy or Germany, where people more coming from the liberal side more to the far right because of the same problems we're suffering, like non-affordable housing. I mean, it's not in the extremes like we see in Canada, but food prices went through the roof, and basically this is what Germany specifically, the media is thinking, pushed Trudeau out. There were some statistics we read here from the German media where they said that 3 out of 4 Canadians actually requested the resignation of Justin Trudeau, blaming him exactly for this kind of stuff. I mean, they said we gave him credit for the first 4 or 5 years, like when Trump was in his first round in, and they negotiated the tax or the tariffs between U.S. and Canada, where we are the experts of economy here in Germany said specifically that Trudeau did an amazing job and he saved Canada from overpaying taxes or tariffs to the U.S. But then thereafter, he concentrated or focused too much on the immigration politics, but not enough. He just let people in. Like we had the same issue here in Germany, like which the country could not bear with. And like comparing Germany to Canada, a lot of people saying that the massive immigration politics Trudeau was doing, like I think there were around 3 million people coming in the last couple of years all over, put a really downfall on the economy. It didn't give a boost, but like let Canada focus on on this incoming migration instead of focusing too much on the internal politics, like affordable housing, food prices, etc., etc. And that's where Canadians are actually frustrated with.
Now, I watched an interview with a Liberal MP this morning, and one thing that he brought out, he said that he felt that the Liberal Party went too far left under Trudeau over the last number of years, and we need to come back more to the centre. It seems that that's a trend around the world in a lot of democratic countries, that it had gone too far to the left, and now we're going in the opposite direction, and maybe before it's all said and done, we've gone too far to the right. Are you sensing that as well?
Well, here, exactly. I don't want to compare Canada to Germany all the time, but this is exactly what they said also here about Canada. Same problem. We're really focusing too much on the liberal goals, or like the life people should live in a very liberal way, in order to instead of focusing on the real problems in the country. Like it's, yes, we are liberal countries, but there's more things than just like pity patting everyone. Like it comes to the real problems: affordable housing and food prices, and that's it. And yeah, we somehow lost the view here, and in Germany we have the same problem. But specifically also on the immigration politics, we're happy to take immigrants, and I guess Canada as well, but the flow was just too massive, which the German economy, and I think also the Canadian one, could not handle. And that's where we are now. Like the German government was released 2-3 weeks ago. Now we're looking to get a new government on board in order to exactly, it's what I want to say, it's exactly the same happening here in Germany.
All right, let's switch strides here a bit. Donald Trump, once again, rambling on, but seems to be getting more serious, first of all, about annexing Canada as the 51st state of the United States, and talking about what a great powerhouse a combined Canada-US iteration would be. And secondly, looking and now threatening military action to gain Greenland as well as the Panama Canal. Are Germans and people in Europe just shaking their heads in total disbelief? Are they frightened by this? Are they, what do you sense is the reaction?
Well, we say there's always a lot of talk in politics, especially from that side, but how realistic is it actually? Plus, what we did not say is that we should not take Trump not seriously. I mean, we formed a task force before actually Trump was elected the second time in order to determine what would happen if that would be the case. But if we would really look at all the things he's saying, I mean, like, we would go basically ballistic. So we really focus on the hard facts, and until unrealistic things like that happen, there's no really need to discuss it further. So, like, we all take it with a kind of humor, let's put it like that.
All right.
I mean, the Panama situation, I'm not sure, but saying, like, even if you read the media and you see on how Trump was portraying it to Canada, that Russian and Chinese battleships are surrounding them and they would be better protected. I mean, I think we all know this kind of talk is more in direction to the local people in the US, I would say, like, who are not too familiar with foreign politics, sorry to say.
Now, it goes beyond as far as talking about Greenland and even Canada. And he's talking about security as being a prime issue. But it goes beyond that, because both Canada and Greenland are rich in resources that are virtually untapped. Canada in the north, and of course Greenland to a large degree. As someone who's involved in the resource and commodity world, what are your feelings on that, and where we go from here?
Well, like exploration, exploitation, those are two different things, and identifying where some resources are until you really mine them or you get a hand on those resources takes between 10, 20, 30 years. Trump is in office for the next 4 years. That's it. There are also plans like talking about Antarctica, but this is all capital intense. And in the end, it is money which is talking. We know that China is really aggressive on the resource side, and that will be a battle eventually between the US and China, as it has already been in South America, but also in Africa itself. From that point of perspective, I'm not too worried. It's a lot of talking, but in the very end, the money needs to flow, and who brings the money on top of it, that will govern. But it needs to happen really fast. But as I said, like, commodities, resources mining is a dinosaur business, which takes more than 4 years. So it's a lot of talking, but let's really see in the end where it's going. So I don't see anything happen in the next 2-3 years. I mean, he can lead the foundation to there, but it will take some time.
All right, Christian, thanks very much for taking the time out of your busy day today to bring us up to date on the European action and a reaction to what's been happening here in Canada and also south of the border in the US. And we'll be talking again soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So there you a unique perspective on things. He arrived back in Germany on Monday, I think it was. Monday night. And so he's been following things over there. And interesting how he is not the whole thing around the resources, and this is one thing that Trump has been talking about as far as northern Canada is concerned, and Greenland as well. The resources that would be available in both of those areas, but as he says, Trump's only there for 4 years, and it takes a long time to get these sorts of things underway. So, yeah,
right.
But a lot. CNN and MSNBC, Fox, they were all over Trudeau's resignation on Monday on a regular basis. So now, who steps up? All right, we've already had Dominic LeBlanc, the fixer in the Trudeau cabinet, today announced that he is not going to be seeking the leadership.
Oh, I
which
didn't
is
know that. Okay.
Yeah, too bad for the Liberals. But as he said, and I have to give him full marks for this, he said right now he's in charge of the file as far as U.S. Canadian relations, and he also has was behind getting the border security proposal put together and put in front of Trump during the dinner in Mar-a-Lago back in November. He said what he's working on right now is too important to the country for him just to walk away from it for a leadership bid. This is where his focus is, and this is where it's going to stay. And I give the guy full marks for that. Now, there are some other cabinet ministers who may very well be interested in the post. Melanie Joly is one that's been touted. Chrystia Freeland. And in some of the polling since she's resigned, as she has come to the top. Let's see who else is there.
Mark Carney?
Mark Carney on the outside he has confirmed he is considering. And a guy from Quebec by the name of Frank Baylis, who served, I believe, as an MP between 2015 and 2019. said last night, he said, definitely, unless there's some kind of wrench or curveball thrown as far as what the rules around the leadership, are deemed, he said he's in. He's going after it. And I watched him last night on Power Play, the Vashi Capellas, and I was really impressed with him. Very statesmanlike, and he, didn't back away from any questions. He came out with an answer, and I actually found his on-camera presence and the way he handled himself to be somewhat refreshing.
Yeah,
and
I think, and you look at the candidates here that are vying for the Liberal leadership. What do you think, Gary? I think, are we in a situation here, or a lot of the candidates that are pushing for their candidacies, Chrystia Freeland and Melanie Joly, and anybody that's working under the Liberal Trudeau's cabinet right now? Do you think that these individuals are dealing with death by association, being directly under Prime Minister Trudeau's wing for such a long time? Do you think the Liberal Party looks at these individuals as maybe dead weight in terms of getting Canadians to vote Liberal because they were associated with Mr. Trudeau? And the other mindset is, do we bring somebody on board from the outside that's not directly related with the Trudeau cabinet to have that individual lead the party? So it's going to be, at the end of the day, I think, more of a political decision and more of a lifeline decision to the Liberal Party than perhaps selecting the best candidate that can take Canada forward and over the next term after the election. So you're looking at Mark Carney, as you mentioned in the introduction. He's on the outside looking in. Does the Liberal Party say, well, do we need somebody from the outside looking in to be more appealing to the Canadian public, right?
Well, somebody on the outside as well looking in is former BC Premier Christy Clark, who
right,
is said to be giving it pretty serious consideration. As a matter of fact, it was revealed a few months ago that she spent the summer, or a good part of the summer, here in Quebec taking French lessons.
Yeah.
And she has not officially said no. She has not officially said yes, but she has not officially closed the door on that idea either. So it will be interesting to see, because she's coming in from the outside, and already there are some Liberals who are dismissing her because she bought a Conservative membership when Jean Charest, I think it was. Jean Charest was running for the leadership of the Conservative Party, and to support him. And so that's being dredged up, which really, when you go right down to it, as somebody mentioned today, that can happens all the time on all sides. So when I think back to the time I spent in BC, I remember the Liberal Party, to me, seemed to be, even like the colors, their logo at the time. They unveiled a new logo when I was there, and it was red and blue. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at it, and I remember sitting there and thinking to myself, this looks more like a traditional Conservative logo. At least the colors anyway look more traditional Conservative than Liberal. And like the Liberals here in Quebec, it's a different level of liberalism. So she certainly, I think, she is a dynamic, charismatic individual. I met her when she was first elected and sitting on the opposition side of the House. And she went on to the Campbell government, Gordon Campbell government or party, went on to win the election. and she had a number of ministerial portfolios during that time before seeking the party leadership after Campbell stepped down, which she won handily and became, eventually won the election, became premier. I think she has that kind of an appeal to people. She can actually talk to people. So there's another aspect. And one thing I've noticed is this, Eddie, is that overall there seems to be a fair number of women whose names are being tossed around or who have at least indicated that they may be interested in it. And I think that's a great thing to see that whole sort of thing starting to change where
Absolutely.
women are starting to look at, these kinds of positions as far as politics are concerned. And I think that's a major step forward in its own right. Win or lose, I think that's a major step forward.
Absolutely, I agree 100%.
So, you've got some interest from the outside. I heard tonight, caught Steve McKinnon on one of the supper time shows, and he said he's having a look at it. I met him many years ago when he was working in Frank McKenna's office when Frank McKenna was premier. Good guy. I can't say enough good things about any dealings I had with him at the time. Straightforward. He's the Labour Minister now. So he's worked his way through. I don't know how serious he is about it, but he is testing the waters. So there are a number of them testing the waters, but you're right. Do they go in and do they become the sacrificial lamb in this election? Or do they close the gap, come out a hero because they've closed the gap and can springboard on to maybe win, the following election?
Right.
Can they shake off the fact that they have been in the Trudeau cabinet and have been part and parcel of all of these decisions and having to, go out and sell these decisions to the public? Can they shake that off? I don't know. I think from here on, I think people will have a very long memory as far as the Trudeau government and some of the scandals, the whole issue around the carbon tax and climate change, and even right down to this blatant attempt to buy our votes and buy back some of his popularity with the GST holiday, which
Right.
I
just backfired on him big time.
Yeah, exactly. And was he really fighting for the middle class? How do you define middle class? Obviously, he seemed to define it starting at $150,000 a year and down, which rubs salt in the wounds of a lot of people in the middle and the lower part of the middle class, and seniors and others who were not going to get that $250 check. So, the party's going to need a fresh start, but it's a long uphill climb, and I think more than anything, it's coming down to, will Poilievre somewhere along the way make that major misstep that's going to cost
them, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
But the whole thing, Gary, and we said right at the outset of our show today, the clock is ticking. A lot of important things should have already happened to be able to deal what Canada is facing now. January 20th is just around the corner. We're looking at major tariff hikes right across the country from the United States, which would decimate a lot of business here in the country. We have Mr. Trump basically saying, the 51st state and all, and we're going to be using perhaps the economy to be able to stimulate a transition to Canada becoming the 51st state. So, I know Christian had mentioned, a lot of it is just plain old rhetoric for his base in the United States. But some of it could eventually be true, even though, as he said, it could take 15 to 30 years to be able to exploit economically, countries with a vast amount of resources such as ourselves in Greenland, but the wheels can start turning. And, I think it behooves Mr. Trump in his infinite wisdom to start the wheels going, because there's going to be a lot of people after him that are going to be after the same resources. So, here we are, liberal leadership trying to select their new leader. In the meantime, we have a lame duck government that can't do a whole hell of a lot until after the end of March, at which we can expect a snap election to be called, because we're looking at a vote of non-confidence pending, and then we got another 2 or 3 months of campaigning, and then eventually the election, and lottie-dottie, here we are in June, July, before we can even do anything, raise a pencil to anybody. So it's a big uphill climb for the Liberal Party, to get a qualified candidate that we can all believe and trust, and B, for that candidate to actually be elected in what looks like would have been a landslide victory for the Conservative Party had it been held today, next month, 3 months ago, and it's going to come down to Mr. Poilievre screwing up or changing his tone. And the last video that you played certainly showed a certain element of immaturity to me as a statesman in this country, and he's got to learn. His people have to coach him properly, because he put his foot in his mouth on that one for sure. And it's a scary time. I think it's a scary time for us Canadians, because at the end of the day, what have we got left?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Absolutely. And, it's almost at a point, depending on who the Liberals select for a leader, going in and kind of holding your nose behind that cardboard screen to mark an X.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's going to be an extremely interesting and hectic late winter into spring period. And of course, we will be following all of the action. A reminder to please like, subscribe, and share our videos to help our channel grow. The conversation can continue below. Feel free to leave a comment if you so desire. And we want to thank you for watching this evening. Night Talk returns in 7 days. From Montreal, good night. Eddie?
Good night, everybody.